Okay. Well, welcome back. So I want to drop a quick video. I want to just get in the habit of getting these up there for you guys and make sure you guys are supported in your journey. Um, so I got a couple pages I wanted to take a look at today. The first one, this is the major one. This is the Mozilla Developer Network right here. Developer.mozilla.org. And it's the docs and web technologies for developers. Now this is a very important page. If you go back here, let's see. One that I typically mess with. I'm on this JavaScript page a lot. Looking at what methods are in an array and stuff like that. So this is the documentation for JavaScript and HTML. This is where you want to come. Okay. So I wanted to sort of go ahead and go over some things. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about HTML. Okay. I just went to the HTML page. Everything's on this page. If you go through everything, you read this, you will become a master. You'll become an expert. But I'm going to sort of go through it with you. We're going to start with this first tutorial. So let's go ahead and read right here. So at its heart, HTML is a fairly simple language made up of elements which can be applied to pieces of text to give them different meaning in a different document. Is it a paragraph? Is it a bulleted list? Is it part of a table? Structure a document into logical sections. Does it have a header, 3 columns or content, a navigation menu, and embedded content such as image, video into a page? This module will introduce these first. So I don't need to read that. So if you go through each one of these, this is going to give you a great, overview and lesson and dive into what HTML is, you know. But to start with, in my own words, HTML, as it says here, it's a markup language. So it's not, you don't program with it. So taking a step back, let's say what programming is. Programming is, in the most abstract sense, some type of structure. In this specific case, the structure being some type of computer language, but some type of structure that takes in something, transforms that thing, and spits something else out. Okay, that's and like that's even deeper than it might seem. But we're talking about programming here, but everything can be narrowed down to inputs, processing, output, and that's what programming languages do. You don't really do that with HTML. You don't really, like, while there might be form elements. So HTML is a form tag and an input tag for a text field, a text box, and a submit button. When you type in that box and you click that submit button, nothing's going to happen. So it's got some inputs, but it doesn't process and it doesn't output. So it is simply just a way to put structure around words, media, images, video, words. It's a way to structure that stuff, and then you use CSS to then style it. Back in the day, at the beginning of the web, there was no CSS, so you would actually, some of the tags would be styling, so they would have actual B tags. This right here is a P tag, that means paragraph. But nowadays it's you might see strong tags. Those things are starting to be phased out. These M tags, those are okay, but they're really more for semantics, the semantic web you might hear nowadays, but it's really just to let the document know and anything else that's parsing that document, such as CSS or JavaScript, uh, sort of a if you follow the guidelines, the specifications of what HTML says, a p tag, this is a paragraph in a larger body of text, and that sort of leads you down the way of SEO. So when you start building web pages and you want Google to index the page higher for certain keywords that people search for, part of their Google juice is making sure that you have a well-formatted page and you're using the tags correctly. And, I'm looking there's a lot of different tags in HTML. There's input tags, image tags, obviously there's links. So it's basically a language made up of these opening. So basically, this is let's look at a normal one. Opening tag, and then the closing tag is similar to the opening tag, except for it's got this forward slash. There's a couple. There's the BR tag and an image tag, and there might be a couple other ones if you see here that don't actually have closing tags, and they actually close themselves. So you would see at the end of your image tag like a slash here. Well, it looks like actually with HTML5 you don't have to have this ending slash. So there are some tags that just don't have the closing tag. Normally when I do these, traditionally, it would have this slash right here for an input tag, but you don't have to do that anymore. So that's a little bit more consistent. So know that mainly that tags have opening, closing, like this link tag, right? It's got the A, and then it has an attribute, and specifically all links have this href attribute. So href equals, and typically what I do is I use quotes. So this is a very cutting edge here, HTML over here on the Mozilla site, but the href is the URL. So like when someone clicks on this favorite website, you see it's going to take them to this URL right there. So that's how you create a link. So I'm not going to go into every one of these. You can start going into this. Here's for instance, because some of these things are used by HTML, or you might put this in here and it might throw off your parsing. You can literally type this ampersand LT semicolon in HTML, and when you view it in the browser, it will create this lesser than sign. And the same thing with the greater than quote. So these are just, you can type this literally in an HTML document. You type it, okay? You open it up in the browser, and you'll see this. So that's comments. In case you want to, if you're developing and you have some code that you don't necessarily want to erase, but you don't want it to render, or you want to maybe comment your code, this is how you would use it. Remember that these will be visible. These comments will be visible. So go through all this. This is all great information. And just as a word to the wise, don't worry about memorizing it, right? Just be familiar with this page. Just come to it several times a day and just scroll through it and look at it and just spend time and just get used to seeing these words in the context of HTML. And over time, you're going to start putting it together. If you're the type of person that's good at memorizing stuff, go right ahead. But, I think to be able to have this stuff in your head and usable, you have to just sort of keep coming back to it. So let's go over CSS. CSS, okay. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's basically used to style your HTML. So, for instance, let's see here. If I open up the console, what I'm going to try to do is turn off HTML, turn off the CSS. Might not be able to do it easily. Okay, well, I'm not going to do it. I'm more used to Firebug, but if I were to turn off the CSS on this page, you wouldn't see it. Like, it would just be a bunch of text. It would look like a very bad website. And the CSS is what allows the elements to be floated nicely, having this padding and this margin, this coloring. When I hover over this, all this stuff. Obviously, this is also JavaScript as well. It could be CSS. I'd have to look at it, but you get it. CSS is for styling on the page, okay? What does it look like? This is what it looks like. If you have an H1 tag, you type H, you would do H1. This means that all H1s on the page will get this coloring. Color, blue, background color, yellow, and have a border of black. So what if you had multiple H1s and you don't want them all to do that? Well, you would then, in HTML, you can add things called IDs or classes. And let's go back. Let's see if I can find. Well, you can look at it. Let's see. HTML ID. Google is your best friend. Remember that. Let's go to W3 schools. The ID. So an ID looks like that. You can put it on any tag. It's the word ID equals, and this is what I'm saying. Typically, after any of these attributes, you can close whatever the attribute is in quotes. That's just cleaner for me, easier to read. So that's an ID, and then you could say HTML class. And class is the same sort of thing as ID, except for it's class equals. Okay? And the difference between an ID and a class it's using it for JavaScript. So we just go back to the page. In CSS, classes start with the dot. IDs start with a hash. So going back here, scroll down. It's doing everything but classes and IDs today, huh? Who uses IDs anyways? So an ID would have a hash like that. Everybody uses IDs. Everyone uses classes. Yeah, so that's enough of this. I'm sort of go through this best you can. There we go. This is what the class looks like. You can add multiple classes to an element. You separate them by a space. This is first. You see how that period, when you actually type the style sheet up, that's how the class looks. And you're saying anything that has this class attribute on it, give it a font weight bold. Say, with this done, you see right here, it'll have a line through when you see it rendered right there. And a thing to remember is with cascading style sheets is you can have, like you see, multiple styles. And let's say this second had a font weight of, or a color of red, and this done had a color of blue. Then this would actually be blue because it's going to be the last thing that's applied. And it's not necessarily the last thing that's applied. It's the one that's last declared in the style sheet, right? So if second is declared up here and done is declared down here, and they're both applied to this element, and they both have a color. One second has a color of red, for instance, and done, which is down here, has a color of green. Then it would be green because even though they both are specifying the color of the element, it can only be one color, so it's the last one. So things can get pretty hairy sometimes with CSS, where you have all these, thousands of lines of CSS code, and you're getting real just haphazard with your naming, and you're just applying classes everywhere and IDs, and sooner or later you don't know why everything is floating to the right in purple, because you have to really take your time using the console right here, and you want to inspect your styles and turn them off if you have to, and play with it, figure it out. So debugging, that's a whole other thing we can sort of go over. So go ahead, read through this. Okay, it's got everything you need. JavaScript. I'm just going to stick with HTML, CSS for now. The main thing is right now, just sort of read through these, okay? This page is great. It's got everything you need to be able to have a conversation about JavaScript. I don't want you reading this and being like, I can program JavaScript. No, that's the point of doing this Bootcamp, is we're going to eventually get to actual coding, but you have to be able to talk about this stuff and be comfortable sort of with it and sort of know what it does before you get, so that way when we start programming, you're a little more comfortable. You understand what it does, and with that comfort, you're going to be able to learn a lot easier, okay? So if there's any page to always have bookmarked, it's this, okay? And you see, he even talks about Django and everything that we're going to be going into, testing, usability, accessibility. So, this is really, if you want to take good notes, I would take notes on here, to create good quiz questions for yourself and drill this stuff, because when you get it in your brain and you can talk about it, right, that's going to help you learn how to program a lot faster. And you're going to be able to get jobs a lot easier, especially when we start talking about interviewing and all that good stuff. You're going to have to be able to display your knowledge by talking about it, as well as doing coding tests and things like that. So I wanted to show you this site. Hit me up with any questions. I'll drop another video tomorrow and maybe play around with some HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript. And yeah, let's keep going. Have fun.